The original date when IFFR took place for the very first time was in June, 50 years ago. So it also felt symbolically, it felt like a good story to tell. Welcome at today's virtual reality check. You won the Tiger competition of Rotterdam Film Festival this year, 2021. Congratulations.
Wow.
Our opening film for the June edition, The World's to Come by Mona Fastwood.
Welke mensen en verhalen illustreren nou de afgelopen 50 edities?
Srebrenica is ons overkomen. Daar kunnen we misschien niks aan doen. Maar we kunnen nu wel beslissen hoe gaan wij met Srebrenica om.
There's room in history for the quiet ones too. There's not just going to tell stories about Napoleon.
Das, was zwischen Regie und Schauspielerei passiert, ist ja ein totaler Miraculix-Prozess.
Without the component of justice, freedom for its own sake means almost nothing.
میخواستم یه جوری زیبایی و نه لزوماً فقط کارت پستال.
We're living in a future and it's already so old that smartphones are used as wages.
Thank you very much, Vanja, for introducing our Volkskrant-dag.
Tot volgende jaar.
The Rotterdam Film Festival concluded a while ago. How are your overall feelings about this year's festival? What do you like about this year's festival and what you didn't like?
Yes, it was indeed the second installment of 50th edition of IFFR has just recently concluded, and it has been a massive undertaking. And we tried in so many ways, to stay committed to what we care about most, and this is really our audience, our filmmakers, and the industry side, of course, that include also international press and industry delegates. So that was also the driving force for us to try every possible way and every option, to be there for these groups, even if that meant sort of dividing the festival in two parts, which eventually we did. In February, we had exclusively online edition because of the circumstances. We couldn't do it any other way, and it brought focus to so many fantastic films that needed that attention. And as we came to the June edition, we really wanted to have it there because we wanted to be back on the big screen as well and offer the experience of these films to our audiences in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam, at least to experience it in some way this year. Even if we knew, that cinemas, if they open, they're still going to be probably to the limited capacity and so on. So when I think about things that I really liked, I think it's that, trying every possible way, being creative with your own team, adapting, but also seeing that everyone else adapted as well. Filmmakers adapted, audiences adapted, whether it's to seeing the films online, experiencing Q&As interactively online, or having to watch films experience the festival in a completely different way. So that, experiment which resulted in such response, it's incredibly rewarding. There are many things that I would say I didn't like about it. It's the uncertainty until last minute, whether you're going to have your festival online or hybrid or physical. You depend on external circumstances and external decision making that is not yours, it's governmental. And for instance, with the June edition, until very last minute, we didn't know whether we're going to be able to go into cinemas. We had to take a risk that it's almost extended itself nearly to the couple of days before the festival started. And then even then, a major twist happened during the festival. The first 3 days of the festival were testing events. So people could not access the venue without testing. And then this last 2 days of the festival were without testing and communicating this kind of massive amount of information that keeps changing last minute next to, just before your festival begins, where you're really focusing on communication of program and everything we have to offer is quite a challenge. But I think, again, I would say I wouldn't want to have it any other way, because we really tried so many things, and we really all out of the ambition, which included a lot of risk taking, but out of the ambition to be there for the communities we care about most. So it's, again, a very rewarding experience, offering a possibility to see these films, offering a possibility for films to be seen, for filmmakers to interact with their audiences. But on the other hand, of course, it didn't come. It came with a lot of unexpected situations and difficulties that we had to overcome. Yeah.
Okay. And how was the impact of the hybrid festival on the audience participation? Did you see any silent effect on the socio-demographic characteristics of the audience?
Definitely. We also thought this is gonna, in a way, be an interesting experience, because or experiment of sorts, especially with the fully online edition that took place in February, because we wondered, is this gonna bring a bit more of a democratic approach, accessibility to the audience, because all of a sudden everyone who lives in the Netherlands can access the festival. And this is something that we noticed. All of a sudden, sort of the pie chart, when you look at it, of the audience division, who is coming from where, are people from Rotterdam alone, or the region, or a bit more. And then you could see that it's kind of getting a bit more equal, that the Rotterdam participation is almost equal to the whole South Holland region and wider in the Netherlands. So that is really the change that we observed, which informed us as well of certain things in terms of accessibility. A lot of people cannot travel for many different reasons to Rotterdam to experience the festival, and for once, and this was this year, on both occasions, they had an opportunity to see IFFR films without having to come here. On the other hand, what we cherish about most and what we value most is also the experience of being here, being with the community of the filmmakers, of the industry, and with the audience, collectively experiencing and celebrating cinema and everything what makes all the communities that are responsible for making cinemas. So it's a really always sort of a big dilemma, how to then continue with this valuable information that we have. We know that we want to be there for the wider audience that cannot come here. On the other hand, we also are absolutely committed to continuing being here in Rotterdam and have this central event that is our festival that brings, again, everyone together. So I think now we're in process of understanding what does that mean for next year, and how are we going to complement what we have, and this is our festival, with this possibility of giving access to audiences that cannot physically join us at the festival. This is something definitely that we are now working on how best we can implement. Yeah.
And how was the impact of hybrid festival and the festival finance regarding income from sponsorship and ticket sales?
Well, of course, this is this was an extreme year when it comes to what you can possibly get from ticket sales in comparison to any other year. We are one of the largest film festivals in Europe, with a massive audience presence and admissions in a usual year. Our program was cut in more than half, and then physical attendance, no matter how it was possible in June now, it was reduced. I mean, maximum, we would sell out venues, but that meant on some occasions that no more than 100, 130 people would be there per screening, sometimes far less, because in smaller venues, you have to reduce you have reduced capacity to sometimes 30 people max. And so yeah, we knew from very early on that that when it comes to ticket sales, we're not going to come even close to what we do in a usual year for all these variables. But we are lucky to be in a country, on a continent where public support for cultural events as ours is still very strong. So we received support for sort of a complement for from the government that helps us to overcome this period where we cannot sell possibly tickets because there is no number of films, no capacity available. And when it comes to, so we were in that regard very lucky because we could have continued with this event and be there in these most important times where just closing the door for us was not an option. But we could have only done that because we have the support we do from the government, but also from our partners, that the moment we went to them and presented them with our story, with our plans, they were fully on board with us. So in that regard, there were no losses. Yeah. But it's not a model that I would dare to say it's a sustainable one. We can do it in a year of crisis, but we cannot continue like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Have you surveyed filmmakers or journalists after the festival? If so, how did you find their experience or their reaction to this year hybrid festival?
So yeah, indeed, so every year we send out surveys and different ones, so to different industry delegates, to audiences as well. We try to collect as much info and feedback as we can, and in order to improve and understand, what everything that we do plus our services are, to everyone's satisfaction, and are the things that we need to improve on. So it's an extremely important point of evaluation as well for us when we are planning, upcoming editions. Yeah. And I think there was no more important edition to get this feedback than this one. So yes, indeed, we have talked to the filmmakers and we talked to the press and still collecting and analyzing all the information that is now coming all together, but from what we received already from different parties is very positive. When I think, for instance, of filmmakers, the fact that they got a chance to not only show their work but network with fellow colleagues. Now in this edition, we had the very different approaches to Q&As between the February edition and June edition. In June now, filmmakers could sort of be in the venue with us virtually, albeit, but on the big screen, seeing the audience as well, and having a moderator in a room asking questions, so really connecting in a very intimate way, live with the audience, and that was incredibly rewarding. But also, getting feedback from how things were going here in Rotterdam during the festival, having daily sessions in which we could connect with everyone and get to know people. So we really tried our best in that sense to really make filmmakers still feel like they're the most important element, and a very important member of this community that makes festival a film festival, even if they cannot attend. So that was very much appreciated, next to, of course, the effort of just being there as well. Yeah.
Given that filmmakers live in different regions of the world at different times, how was the experience of Q&A session with filmmakers?
Yeah, that is quite a conundrum, because normally when you plan Q&As, you have like 3 or 4 screenings, and when the filmmaker is attending the festival, we are a very long festival. We take more than 10 days, right? So you don't ever, unless the filmmaker is living in Rotterdam or in Holland, usually they're there for 1 or 2 Q&As, right? And it's not so difficult to plan because everything is in one time zone. But now all of a sudden you're facing a completely different conundrum when you're making the program schedule, because also there is this incredible important time in the programming when you're finalized with the program, and then you enter in the room where you have this big board, and very carefully you're planning between the cinemas, which film comes at which time, how many times to repeat it, and it's really a dramaturgy on its own that has, again, many parameters that dictate how you should do things. But then all of a sudden this year we had this like completely additional variable being on board, and that is that if you have a film for Japan, it can only be done. If you have a film for Australia, also only then. If it's Canada, then it's only then. South America, and this and that. So I must say, if there was that presented a completely more, in difficult, it really was an additional difficulty when we were creating the program. So what we decided to do this year was to do, in the June edition, to do definitely 2 Q&As per film. But then for some that meant, I really sympathize with a few filmmakers because, there was a film from Korea and we absolutely, because of the length of the topic and everything, we knew that one screening has to be a bit more, later in the day or in the evening. And it was a very long film. And the filmmaker and the interpreter, they had to be there at 2:30 in the morning, their time, which was our afternoon or late evening or early evening, and so on. So it was a big challenge, but every time I felt, to all the Q&As that I was part of, and then you experience this, all sorts of things, either people calling in the middle of the night or in the morning to participate in a Q&A and entering a space where audience has experienced something, very different, and they're coming from completely different from their living room most of the times. So that already, this discrepancy of space in which you're experiencing this together was an interesting thing to observe. But I always, as I said before, it always created this very sort of intimate atmosphere, and people really connected, and audience asked more questions. I felt, the sense of this group coming together felt much more cohesive. And I think to a large degree this is because there were small groups. Normally you have full cinemas, big cinemas, full of people, but now you're always limited in terms of how many audience are participating at the screening. So it did create a new sense of intimacy and cohesion of the whole group. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
I see that not all titles are available to watch through Festival Pro, and some of the films are only available for physical screening. How was the experience of working with right holders during hybrid festival? Did you have to cancel the screening of any films because of the concerns about online screening?
Yeah, definitely. It was something that, again, the circumstance, they did impose a new challenges, and not everything always works out. But even in a regular year, you don't always get all the films that you want because of different plans that films have, or whatever, external reason impacted. But actually, a correction is there to make, and that is that all the films that we had were available both physically and online in the Netherlands. So there was no film that we could only screen physically and not screen online. So, which also, of course, dictated certain choices, certain programs. There were few world premieres or bigger budget movies that had an imperative to be exclusively physically presented first, and then only go into the online exploitation. So there are a few films that we wanted very much in our program, but realized that because of our, because it was paramount to show the films online, we didn't want to, deviate for that. So we wanted to really have all the same logic for all the films. So in the Netherlands, if you're here, you can access all the films physically and online. And then we have, for the industry professionals, and we do have an online platform called Festival Scope, which is a B2B platform. So it, of course, serves professionals to access films. However, and most of the films were available entirely, but it did occur for a few titles that if they're sold in several territories, the rights holder then decides not to maybe show them there. Okay. Because they already have their own representation or a festival they're going to participate at, or there is a reason that for the press, for press, they want to have press only for several territories and not for the others. So sometimes that impacts the availability in the territory you're accessing the films from.
Okay, yeah, because I had experience of not having access to all the films in Canada, so I thought maybe
it may have been because of that. Yeah.
You are among the festival that accepts submission only through your platforms, through your website. Given your recent experience with new online website, have you considered using online platforms like Film Free Page for future or for submission?
For the time being, we are really investing. We have our own IT department and development, that invests a lot in improvement of our own websites, of our own database, and the whole, ecosystem that is part of it. And that, of course, includes the film submissions. That all it goes through our website directly to our database. And of course, this year was brought a lot of new improvements and a lot of new focus on the digital side of the festival, building the whole, again, ecosystem in which we are showing the films, because for you as an industry professional, you access the films through a B2B platform, which is a partner one, and that's Festival Scope. But if you would have been accessing films here from the Netherlands, you would have the whole experience from our own website. And it's really an incredible work that our team has done to render this experience quite seamless. You're accessing your film page. You can, of course, check the trailer, get a ticket, and click and enter and see the introduction for the film, the recorded Q&A, and so on. So it was quite an amazing work that has been executed so well, I must say, in a short period of time. So I think from where we stand from and how much we have already developed of our own systems, I think we are for the time being gonna stay with what we have and continue having submissions and showcase of the films from our own website.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I imagine that you had to organize the programming sessions through Zoom meetings. How did you find that experience procedurally? Is it very different to program films online compared to face-to-face meeting?
I think that, we had to all get used to what we can do. We have programmers that work, there's one in Toronto as well. We have programmers that come from all over the world. And of course, even in a regular year, we wouldn't be able to meet here in Rotterdam every time we need to discuss the selection of the film program. We would more certainly, as we are gradually entering in the final, final stage of programming, where we have to watch films all day long, then we would likely meet here in person. But in a regular year, it would be the same. We would have to, use, digital spaces to meet and discuss film selection. So I do think, yes, of course, the nature of conversation can stay the same, but the way how you're experiencing it is different. And but I think we have overcome that already in first couple of months, and could have, continued with these conversations in a rather constructive way. We are a big programming team, so anyway, the way how we are programming films is structured, from smaller teams working together, and then bigger team comes where final decisions are made. So we are trying to also make the groups that are, smaller, so they also become more manageable for any kind of discussion you want to have, whether it's physically in a physical space or in a digital one. But there's one thing that I think we missed, and where you usually would come together with some colleagues, team members, and that's film festivals. With such a big programming team, every time you go to a film festival, there is a strong chance that a few of your colleagues are also going to be there. And this we haven't experienced at all this year. And I think I missed that very much. All of us have.
Yeah. And what about the goal?
When I think about film selection as such, whether that has impacted our conversations or the way how we have selected films, I don't think, not at all. I mean, the same passion and the same advocacy for films that programmers wanted to have in the festival has, continued. You could feel it, in the writing form, in this, assessment of the film that comes in writing, or in the conversations that we have had like this.
And you said that mandatory testing was a significant hurdle for audience returning to cinema, and you find it another viable long-term option. Can you elaborate more on this? Was there any mandatory testing for people who wanted to come to the festival? If so, how did this work?
That was, yes, the mandatory testing was definitely the biggest hurdle, because to even become an option for us, this wasn't even an option until very late into some last stages of the festival organization. So in the Netherlands, only few bigger events, such as the Eurovision Song Festival, that or big football matches and things like that, that would have, under experimental still stage, were tested as this kind of events, where audience has to mandatory do a test before and after the events, right? So for us to be that was not even an option until the government decided not to still open the cinemas or cultural events, and few bigger festivals were coming up, including ours, right? And this is where we had to actually do our own a lot of our own discussions with the government and the city officials to see, because there was no other option. Either we become a testing event or we don't happen at all. That was, at least for a short period of time, right before the festival, the only option. And we were granted this permission, but because our audience doesn't have a habit of it, or we didn't even have time to advertise ourselves as to spread this information and say, you can come to IFFR, but you have to test, and it goes like this, this, and that. We didn't have 10 days to do it, not even 10 days. So you can imagine that is a hurdle on its own, because people don't have habits to do that. And in Rotterdam, to our great regret, the only testing station, it was for free, of course, but you had to go at the outskirts of the city. That was only one place that you could go and test and come back. So if you come from the city center and want to go there and come back, it takes about 40 minutes, if not an hour, right? And then this is only available for 40 hours. So if you want to attend the full festival, like ours, so 5 days as a testing event, you have to do it at least 3 times. So it's a bit, it's a lot for audience to take in, to do. Of course, we have very loyal audience members who would do anything to, be able to go back to the cinema and see films, and we have noticed that. But for a lot of other audience members, this is simply a lot to take in, to even understand, to find out, and so on. So that, we noticed, made an impact in the first 3 days of the festival. But then the government also decided to open cultural events and cinemas and spaces earlier than they initially anticipated. So the last 2 days of the festival, we ended up being a regular event without testing. So that you could immediately see changed, of course, audience behavior as well, and pretty much all the screenings started selling out very quickly.
Okay. At the end of the interview, do you want to say anything to the audience that you feel missed during our conversation?
Oh, I think we already had quite a long conversation that I very much enjoyed, and that next time I talk to you, perhaps we'll also gonna speak directly from Rotterdam, because you're gonna come here, and then we can also address our very rich programs and things we're planning in 2022 edition for the festival. But it's been a pleasure talking to you.